Welcome to the English Pod community. I'm Blake, and I'm so glad you're here. If you want to improve your English listening and speaking skills, you're in the right place. On this channel, we upload videos every day to help you learn English in a simple and natural way. Today's episode is all about how to start speaking English with confidence. Do you ever feel nervous when you try to speak English? Do you worry about making mistakes or not knowing the right words? If so, you're not alone. Many English learners face the same problem, but don't worry. In this episode, we're going to focus on overcoming that fear and starting simple, real-life conversations in English. You'll hear some stories and examples that will help you learn how to speak more confidently. And as you listen, you'll improve not only your listening skills, but also your writing and speaking. Let's start with a question. What's the main reason you feel nervous when speaking English? Is it fear of making mistakes? Is it because you think your English isn't good enough? Or maybe you just don't know how to start a conversation. Think about that for a moment. Now, let me tell you a quick story. My friend Daniel moved to an English-speaking country last year. When he first arrived, he felt very shy about speaking English. He knew some basic words and grammar, but he was afraid people wouldn't understand him. One day, he went to a coffee shop. He wanted to order a cup of tea, but he felt so nervous that he just pointed at the menu instead of speaking. Later, Daniel realized something important. If he wanted to improve his English, he had to start speaking, even if he made mistakes. So the next day, he went back to the same coffee shop. This time, he took a deep breath and said, "Hi, I'd like a cup of tea, please." It was a simple sentence, but it was a big step for him. The cashier smiled and understood him perfectly. That small success gave Daniel the confidence to keep speaking English every day. The lesson here is, start simple. You don't need to use long, complicated sentences. Just focus on short, clear phrases. For example, when you meet someone new, you can say, "Hi, my name is your name. It's nice to meet you." Or when you're shopping, you can ask, "How much is this?" Another tip is to practice common questions and answers. Let's imagine a conversation between Daniel and his neighbor, Mr. Smith. Daniel: "Hi, good morning. How are you today?" Mr. Smith: "Good morning, Daniel. I'm doing well, thank you." "How about you?" Daniel: "I'm good, thanks. By the way, I saw your garden. It looks amazing." Mr. Smith: "Thank you. My wife and I love gardening. Do you like plants?" Daniel: "Yes, I do. I don't know much about gardening, but I'd love to learn." See how simple and natural that conversation is? You don't need perfect grammar or fancy words. Just be friendly and show interest. Another way to build confidence is to prepare. Think of common situations where you might need to speak English, like at the grocery store, at work, or when meeting new people. Practice what you might say in those situations. For example, if you're going to the doctor's office, you can prepare sentences like, "I have an appointment at 10 a.m." or "I've been feeling a little sick. I'll share more tips and stories in a moment. But first, take a second to think, what simple English sentence can you use today? Maybe you can greet a coworker, ask a question at a store, or just say thank you to someone in English. Start small and build from there. Another great way to become more confident in speaking English is to practice with people you know. Start with family members, friends, or coworkers who speak English. You don't have to wait for a perfect moment. Just use simple opportunities in your day-to-day life. For example, my friend Emma started learning English last year. At first, she was really shy and she didn't want to speak because she was afraid of making mistakes. But then she made a small change. She decided to speak English with her husband at home for a few minutes every day. They would talk about simple things like what they wanted to eat for dinner or their plans for the weekend. One day, Emma's husband asked her, "What do you feel like eating tonight?" And Emma answered in English, "I feel like having some chicken and rice." It was a small conversation, but the more they practiced, the more comfortable she became. After a few weeks, she noticed she could speak faster and with fewer mistakes. This shows how important it is to practice speaking every day, even for a few minutes. You don't need long conversations. Short and simple ones work just as well. The key is consistency. The more you speak, the more natural it feels. Another thing that helps is not being afraid of mistakes. A lot of learners worry too much about saying everything perfectly. But the truth is, mistakes are part of learning. Think about how children learn their first language. They make lots of mistakes, but they keep speaking. And because they keep trying, they improve. Let me tell you about my experience. When I first started learning another language, I made lots of mistakes. Once, I went to a store and I wanted to buy some bread. But instead of saying bread, I accidentally used the wrong word and asked for something completely different. The shopkeeper looked confused, but then they smiled and helped me find what I needed. We both laughed about it, and I realized it was okay to make mistakes. So don't let the fear of mistakes stop you. People are usually kind and patient when they see you're trying, and every mistake is a chance to learn and get better. Also, remember to listen carefully when others speak. Listening helps you learn the right pronunciation, intonation, and natural expressions. When you listen, try to repeat what you hear out loud. For example, if someone says, "How's your day going?" you can practice repeating that question a few times. This helps you get used to the rhythm of the language. If you don't have people to practice with, you can also practice by talking to yourself. It might feel strange at first, but it's a great way to build your speaking skills. Describe what you're doing in English. "I'm making breakfast," "I'm getting ready for work," or "I'm going for a walk." The more you speak out loud, the more confident you'll become. We'll keep going with more tips and examples, so stay with me. Think about this. What's one simple sentence you can say in English today? Maybe you can greet someone, ask a question, or describe your day. Start with that. Another powerful way to build confidence in speaking English is to put yourself in real-life situations where you have no choice but to speak. It might sound a little scary at first, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The key is to start small and gradually push yourself out of your comfort zone. Let me share a story about my friend Adam. Adam moved to Canada for work, but he wasn't very confident in his English. He understood the language when reading or listening, but when it came to speaking, he would hesitate, worry about his grammar, and sometimes avoid conversations altogether. He told me that he always felt nervous before speaking, especially when talking to native speakers. He was afraid they wouldn't understand him, or that he would say something wrong. One day, Adam's company sent him to a meeting where he had to introduce himself in English. He was really anxious, but he had no choice. So he took a deep breath and said, "Hello, my name is Adam. I work in the marketing department, and I am happy to be here." It was a simple introduction, but it was a big step for him. After the meeting, he felt relieved, but he also realized something important. Most people didn't care if his English wasn't perfect. They just wanted to understand him. After that day, Adam started challenging himself to speak more. He made a rule for himself. Every day, he had to start at least one conversation in English. Sometimes, it was just a small interaction, asking a coworker how their weekend was, ordering food at a restaurant, or talking to a cashier at the store. Other times, he tried longer conversations, like discussing a work project or chatting with a neighbor. At first, it was difficult. He still made mistakes, but he noticed that most people were kind and patient. Over time, his confidence grew, and speaking English became easier for him. Now, Adam can communicate without feeling nervous, and he doesn't worry about making mistakes anymore. His experience teaches us a valuable lesson. The best way to improve your speaking confidence is to practice in real-life situations. If you avoid speaking, you will never improve. But if you take small steps every day, you will get better, just like Adam did. Now, let's talk about practical strategies you can use to start speaking English with confidence. First, use simple and clear sentences. You don't need to use difficult vocabulary or long sentences to sound fluent. Many native English speakers use short and simple sentences in daily conversations. Instead of saying, "I would like to inquire about the availability of this product," you can just say, "Do you have this?" or "Is this available?" Both sentences mean the same thing, but the second one is much easier to say. Second, prepare common phrases for everyday situations. Think about the conversations you often have in your daily life and prepare a few sentences you can use in those situations. For example, at a store, "Excuse me, where can I find the bread?" At a restaurant, "I would like some chicken and rice, please." At work, "Can you explain this to me?" Or, "Let's talk about the project." Meeting new people. "Hi, my name is your name. Nice to meet you." If you practice these sentences, they will become natural to you. When the time comes to use them, you won't have to think too much. Another useful strategy is to repeat phrases you hear in conversations. If someone says, "How's your day going?" you can repeat it in your head and try saying it yourself. Later, repeating common phrases helps you feel more comfortable using them. Let's take an example. Imagine you are at work, and your coworker, James, starts a conversation. James, "Hey, how's your day going?" You, "It's going well, thanks." "How about you?" James, "Pretty good. Just a bit busy with this project." You, "Yeah, I understand. Work has been busy for me too." That's a simple conversation, but it's exactly the kind of English you will use in real life. You don't need complicated vocabulary to communicate effectively. The goal is to speak naturally and comfortably. One more thing that helps is thinking in English. Many English learners translate everything in their heads before speaking, and that can slow them down. Instead of translating, try to think directly in English. For example, if you are walking outside and see the sun, instead of thinking in your native language and then translating, just say in your mind, "The sun is shining." If you are hungry, think, "I want to eat something." The more you practice thinking in English, the faster and more confident you will become. If you ever feel stuck in a conversation because you don't know a word, don't panic. There's always a way to explain things in a simple way. For example, if you don't remember the word refrigerator, you can say, "the big cold box in the kitchen." Native speakers do this too when they forget words. The important thing is to keep the conversation going and not let small difficulties stop you from speaking. I have another story that shows how confidence in speaking English grows with practice. My neighbor, Mr. Hassan, moved to the United States 5 years ago. At first, he didn't speak much English. He would only say hello to people and avoid long conversations. But he really wanted to improve, so he made a habit of talking to his neighbors whenever he saw them. At first, it was just short greetings like, "Good morning," or "How are you?" But slowly he started asking more questions. He would say, "How was your weekend?" or "What do you do for work?" His neighbors were friendly, and they always answered his questions. Over time, Mr. Hassan felt more comfortable speaking, and now he can have full conversations without any fear. The biggest lesson here is that confidence comes with practice. If you wait until you feel ready, you may never start speaking. But if you take small steps every day, you will improve without even realizing it. Now, I want you to think about this. When was the last time you spoke English with someone? Was it at work, in a store, or maybe with a friend? If you haven't spoken English today, challenge yourself to say something simple. Even if it's just a short sentence, it's a step forward. There's still so much to discuss, so let's continue with more examples and practical tips. Stay with me. One of the most important things to remember when you're learning to speak English with confidence is that mistakes are part of the process. In fact, making mistakes is one of the best ways to learn. When you make a mistake, you realize what went wrong and how to fix it next time. But many people feel embarrassed when they make mistakes, and that fear of embarrassment can stop them from speaking at all. If that sounds like you, let me tell you this. People will not judge you for making mistakes. Most people will admire your effort to learn a new language. Let me tell you a story about my friend Daniel. Daniel moved to England with his wife and 2 kids. He had studied English in school, but when he arrived, he found it difficult to speak in real conversations. He knew the grammar rules and had a good vocabulary, but when it was time to speak, he would freeze. He was afraid of saying the wrong thing or not being understood. One day, Daniel went to a bakery to buy some bread. He wanted to ask, "Do you have any fresh bread?" But he got nervous and said, "Have you bread fresh?" The cashier smiled and said, "Yes, we have fresh bread right here." Daniel realized his sentence wasn't perfect, but the cashier still understood him. That moment changed everything for him. He understood that even if his sentences weren't perfect, people would still understand him, and that's what really matters in conversation. After that, Daniel decided he wouldn't let his fear of mistakes stop him. He started speaking more in every situation, at the store, at work, and with his neighbors. Over time, his sentences became clearer, his confidence grew, and he stopped worrying so much about being perfect. The more he spoke, the better he got. This is a lesson I want you to remember. Don't wait until your English is perfect to start speaking. Start speaking now, and your English will improve as you practice. You'll make mistakes, and that's okay. Every mistake is a step closer to fluency. Another way to build your confidence is to practice speaking English at home by yourself. You might wonder, how can I practice speaking if no one is around? But there are actually many ways to do this. For example, you can describe what you're doing out loud. If you're cooking, you can say, "Now I'm chopping the onions. I'm heating the oil. I'm adding the spices." If you're cleaning your house, you can say, "I'm sweeping the floor. I'm wiping the table. I'm organizing the books." This helps you think in English and become comfortable with common vocabulary. You can also practice by talking about your day. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to speak out loud and describe what happened. You can say, "Today I went to work. I had a meeting with my boss. We talked about the new project. In the evening, I went for a walk with my wife. The weather was nice, and we had a good conversation." If you want to take this a step further, record yourself speaking. Listen to the recording and pay attention to your pronunciation and fluency. Don't be too critical of yourself. Remember, the goal is progress, not perfection. Over time, you'll notice improvements, and that will boost your confidence even more. Let's talk about one more thing that helps with speaking confidence: learning how to keep a conversation going even when you don't know what to say. People worry that they'll run out of things to talk about or that they won't understand the other person's question. But you don't need to know everything to have a good conversation. Let's go even deeper into this idea of building confidence when speaking English, because I know this is something so many learners struggle with. If you've ever felt nervous, shy, or afraid of making mistakes when speaking English, you're definitely not alone. But I promise you, there are real simple ways to overcome that fear and start speaking with confidence. One of the first and most important things to remember is that confidence doesn't come from speaking perfectly. It comes from practice and consistency. Think about a child learning to walk. They don't wait until they know how to walk perfectly before they try. They take one step, fall down, get back up, and keep going. And that's exactly what you need to do with speaking English. You take one step, you make mistakes, but you keep going. And that's how you improve. Let me tell you a story about my friend David. When David first started learning English, he knew a lot of vocabulary and grammar, rules. But when it came to speaking, he would freeze. He was so afraid of saying the wrong thing that sometimes he wouldn't say anything at all. One day, he was at his son's school for a parent-teacher meeting, and the teacher asked him a question. "How is your son doing with his homework at home?" David understood the question, but he got so nervous that he just said, "Yes, homework is good." He felt embarrassed because he knew his answer didn't really make sense. But here's what happened next. The teacher smiled and said, "That's great. Does he need any extra help with his reading?" David realized something important at that moment. Even though his answer wasn't perfect, the conversation kept going. The other person was patient and kind. And that's what you'll find most of the time. People will be understanding and supportive when you're learning a language. After that, David decided to stop being afraid of mistakes. He started speaking more. At the grocery store, at work, and even with his neighbors. And every time he spoke, his confidence grew. He realized that communication is not about being perfect. It's about being understood. And the more you practice, the easier that becomes. Now, let's talk about a really simple technique that can help you start speaking English right away. Thinking in English. A lot of learners translate everything from their native language to English in their head before they speak. And that takes a lot of time and energy. It also makes you more nervous because you're trying to remember the perfect translation. But when you start thinking in English, you skip that step and start speaking more naturally. Here's how you can practice this. Start with simple things around you. When you're getting dressed in the morning, think, I'm wearing a blue shirt and black pants today. When you're cooking breakfast, think, I'm making eggs and toast. I need to get the butter from the fridge. When you're walking to work, think, the weather is nice today. I see children playing in the park. You can also practice by describing your day out loud. At the end of the day, take 5 minutes to talk to yourself in English. You could say, today was a busy day. I had a meeting with my manager in the morning. We talked about a new project. In the afternoon, I finished some reports. In the evening, I went for a walk with my wife. It was a nice, relaxing evening. When you do this every day, you start getting more comfortable forming sentences in English. And when it's time to speak to someone else, the words will come to you more easily. Another powerful way to build confidence is by using simple, polite phrases that keep conversations going. A lot of learners worry that if they don't understand everything, the conversation will stop. But you don't need to understand every word to keep a conversation going. You just need a few helpful phrases. Let's imagine you're talking to your neighbor, Mr. Khan. Mr. Khan, hi, how are you? You, I'm doing well, thank you. How about you? Already you've started the conversation with confidence. Now, let's say Mr. Khan asks, did you hear about the new park opening next week? If you didn't quite understand, you could say, you. Sorry, could you say that again? Or you. I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it, please? And if you still don't understand, that's okay too. You can say, you. I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain it a bit more? These simple, polite phrases show that you're engaged and trying your best. And that's what really matters. Now, let's talk about another technique that helps. You sound more confident using follow-up questions. Follow-up questions show that you're interested in the conversation and help keep it going. Let's imagine you're talking to a colleague named Emma. Emma, I had a really busy weekend. You, oh really? What did you do? When Emma answers, you can ask another follow-up question. Emma, we had some family over for dinner. You, that sounds nice. Do they live nearby? See how this keeps the conversation flowing naturally? You don't need to have perfect English. You just need curiosity and a few simple questions. One of the best ways to practice this is by role-playing common conversations. Imagine you're at a cafe ordering coffee. Barista, hi, what can I get you today? You, hi, I'd like a cappuccino, please. Barista. Sure. Would you like anything to eat? You. Yes. I'll have a croissant, please. You can even practice these conversations out loud at home. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel in real situations. I also want to share one more story with you. This one's about my cousin, Ahmed. Ahmed got a new job where he had to speak English every day. At first, he was really nervous because he didn't feel confident in his speaking skills. But instead of letting that fear stop him, he decided to practice every day. He started small by greeting his colleagues in the morning. Good morning. How's your day going? Then he started joining conversations at lunch, even if he only said a few sentences. Over time, his confidence grew, and now he leads meetings in English without any fear. Ahmed told me the secret to his success was this. I stopped worrying about being perfect and focused on being clear and friendly. The more I practiced, the easier it became. And that's exactly what I want for you. Don't wait until your English is perfect. Start speaking today, even if it's just a little bit every day. The more you speak, the better and more confident you'll become. Let's really take our time and go deeper into this because speaking English with confidence is one of the most important skills you can build. And the truth is, it's not just about knowing grammar or having a big vocabulary. It's about how comfortable you feel using the language in real-life situations. I know that can be tough sometimes, but I promise you, if you stick with me and keep practicing, you'll get there. So far, we've talked about how confidence comes from practice, how making mistakes is part of learning, and how using simple, polite phrases can help keep conversations going. But I want to take it even further now. Let's really focus on practical techniques and real-life examples that you can start using right away to sound more natural and confident when speaking English. One of the biggest things that stops people from speaking English is the fear of making mistakes. And I completely understand that. Nobody likes feeling embarrassed or not knowing the right words. But here's something really important to remember. Making mistakes is not a bad thing. In fact, it's one of the best ways to learn. Another thing that helps a lot is starting with simple conversations. You don't have to jump into long, complicated discussions right away. Begin with small, everyday conversations, like saying hello to your neighbors, asking simple questions at the store, or talking to your colleagues at work. For example, let's say you're at a grocery store and you want to ask where the apples are. You can keep it simple. You. Excuse me, where can I find the apples? Store worker, they're in aisle 3. You. Thank you so much. That's a short, simple conversation, but it's real practice. And every time you have a conversation like this, you're building your confidence bit by bit. Now, let's talk about something really important. Preparation. One of the best ways to feel confident when speaking English is to prepare for situations you know you'll face. Think about the kinds of conversations you have in your daily life, at work, at the store, with your kids' teachers, or at the doctor's office. If you prepare some common phrases and questions for these situations, you'll feel much more ready when the time comes. Let's take an example. Imagine you're going to a doctor's appointment. You can prepare questions like, how long will I have to wait? Can you explain this prescription, please? What should I do to feel better? You can also prepare answers to questions the doctor might ask. I've had this pain for 3 days. I feel tired and dizzy. The medicine isn't helping. When you prepare like this, you take away a lot of the fear and nervousness because you already know what to say. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. Another great way to build confidence is by practicing with a partner. If you have a friend, family member, or colleague who speaks English, ask them if they'll help you practice. You can role-play different situations, like ordering food at a restaurant, making an appointment, or having a casual conversation. For example, Hi, I'd like to book an appointment with Dr. Smith. Receptionist. Sure. When would you like to come in? Do you have any openings on Friday morning? Receptionist. Let me check. Yes, we have 10 a.m. available. That works for me. Thank you. The more you practice like this, the more comfortable you'll feel when you have these conversations in real life. Let's also talk about using body language and tone to sound more confident. Sometimes your body language can show nervousness, even if your words are correct. If you look down, avoid eye contact, or speak very quietly, people might think you're unsure, even if you're saying the right things. So here's a tip. Stand or sit up straight, make eye contact, and smile when you greet people. When you speak, try to keep your voice clear and steady. You don't need to speak loudly, just loud enough to be heard clearly. I'll share another story. This one is about my cousin James. James had a job interview in English, and he was really nervous. But before the interview, he practiced. Standing up straight, making eye contact, and speaking clearly. When the interview started, he greeted the interviewer with a big smile and said, "Good morning. Thank you for meeting with me today." Right away, the interviewer saw his confidence, even though James was still a little nervous inside. By the end of the interview, James felt great because he knew he had made a good impression, not just with his words, but with his confident attitude. And guess what? He got the job. Finally, I want to talk about one more thing that can really help: building a daily habit of speaking English. The more you use English, the more comfortable you'll become. Even if you don't have people to talk to every day, you can still practice. Here are some ideas. Talk to yourself in English when you're cooking, cleaning, or driving. Describe your day out loud before you go to bed. Record yourself speaking, and listen to see how you can improve. Read a short article or story and then summarize it out loud in your own words. When you make English a part of your daily life, speaking starts to feel natural. And the more natural it feels, the more confident you'll become. I hope you're starting to see that speaking English with confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to try. Every time you speak, you're getting better. Every mistake you make teaches you something new. And every small conversation helps you grow. All right, let's keep going and really dive deep into this, because building confidence when speaking English takes time, practice, and the right mindset. The more we explore this topic, the more tools you'll have to speak English naturally and comfortably in everyday life. And remember, every step you take brings you closer to fluency. So, let's take this step together. One of the most important things to remember when you're trying to speak English with confidence is that your mindset plays a huge role. If you believe you can improve and you stay positive, you'll learn much faster. But if you keep telling yourself, my English isn't good enough, or I'm too scared to speak, it becomes much harder to grow. So, the first step is changing how you think. Start telling yourself, I'm learning and getting better every day, and it's okay to make mistakes because that's how I improve. Let me tell you a story about my friend Daniel. When Daniel started learning English, he felt really shy. He knew some words and grammar, but every time he tried to speak, he froze. He was so afraid of saying something wrong that he would stay quiet even when he knew the answer. But one day, something changed. Daniel met a neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who was very friendly. Mr. Johnson asked him, "How are you doing today?" And instead of staying quiet, Daniel took a deep breath and answered, "I'm good, thank you. And you?" It was a simple response. But that small moment gave Daniel a huge boost of confidence. He realized that people weren't judging him for his mistakes. They were just happy he was trying. From then on, Daniel started speaking more often. He made mistakes, of course. But every mistake taught him something new. And the more he spoke, the more comfortable he became. So, if you feel nervous about speaking English, remember Daniel's story. Start small. Even a simple hello or how are you is progress. Every word you say brings you closer to confidence. Now, let's talk about something that really helps when you're learning to speak with confidence. Practicing with people you trust. If you have a friend, a coworker, or a family member who speaks English, ask them to practice with you. Tell them you want to improve, and they'll probably be happy to help. When you practice with someone patient and supportive, you'll feel more comfortable trying new words and expressions. For example, my cousin Emily wanted to practice English, so she started having short conversations with her husband every evening. They would talk about their day, what they ate for dinner, or their plans for the weekend, all in English. At first it was a little difficult, and she made a lot of mistakes. But because she was speaking with someone she trusted, she didn't feel embarrassed. Instead, she learned from those mistakes and kept improving. If you don't have someone to practice with, don't worry. You can still build your speaking skills by talking to yourself. I know it might sound funny, but it works. Try describing what you're doing as you go through your day. For example, I'm making breakfast. I'm frying some eggs and toasting. Bread. I need to get some butter from the fridge. I'm cleaning the living room. I'm vacuuming the carpet and dusting the shelves. The more you speak English out loud, even when you're alone, the more natural it will start to feel. Another great technique is repeating real-life conversations you hear. Imagine you hear someone say, "Excuse me, can you help me find the post office?" Pause for a moment and repeat that sentence out loud. Then, practice different ways to respond. "Sure, it's just down the street on the left." "I'm sorry, I'm not sure. You could ask someone at the cafe." By practicing both sides of the conversation, you'll feel more prepared when you face similar situations in real life. Now, let's talk about preparation, because one of the best ways to feel confident when speaking English is to be prepared for common situations. Think about the kinds of conversations you have every day. Maybe you go to the grocery store, visit the doctor, or call customer service. If you prepare for these situations in advance, you won't feel so nervous when they happen. Let's take an example. Imagine you're going to a bakery to buy some bread. You, good morning. Do you have any fresh bread today? Cashier, yes, we just baked some this morning. Would you like white bread or whole wheat? You, I'll take a loaf of whole wheat, please. How much is it? Cashier, it's $3. You, thank you so much. When you practice conversations like this before you actually need them, you'll feel much more prepared and confident when the time comes. And don't forget about body language. The way you stand, look, and move can also help you sound more confident. Stand up straight, make eye contact, and smile when you greet people. When you speak, use a clear and steady voice. You don't need to speak loudly, just loud enough so the other person can hear you clearly. My friend Ahmed learned this when he had a job interview in English. He was really nervous, but he prepared by practicing his answers and working on his body language. During the interview, he sat up straight, made eye contact, and smiled. Even though his English wasn't perfect, his confident attitude made a great impression. And guess what? He got the job. So remember, confidence isn't just about knowing the right words. It's also about how you carry yourself. When you combine clear speech with positive body language, people will see you as confident, even if you make a few mistakes. Another powerful way to build your speaking confidence is by listening to real conversations in English. The more you listen, the more familiar you'll become with how people use the language in everyday life. Pay attention to how they ask questions, how they respond, and the kinds of phrases they use. Then, practice copying those phrases in your own conversations. For example, if you hear someone say, "That sounds great," or "I really appreciate it," try using those phrases yourself. The more you use natural expressions like these, the more confident you'll sound. And don't be afraid to ask questions if you don't understand something. In fact, asking questions is a great way to keep conversations going. Here are a few simple questions you can use in different situations. Could you say that again, please? What does that word mean? Can you explain that a little more? When you ask questions, you show that you're engaged and interested, and that helps you build stronger connections with the people you're speaking to. Finally, I want you to remember this. Speaking English with confidence is a journey. It takes time, patience, and practice. But every time you speak, even if it's just a few words, you're getting better. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn, and every conversation helps you grow. Let's keep building on this, because the more we explore ways to speak English with confidence, the better prepared you'll be to handle any situation that comes your way. Speaking English fluently and confidently isn't something that happens overnight, but with practice, persistence, and the right strategies, you can definitely get there. So let's dive deeper into the ways you can start speaking English with more confidence, using some easy-to-understand tips and real-life examples that can make a big difference. I want you to think about one thing before we continue. Imagine yourself in a situation where you need to speak English, but you're feeling nervous. Maybe it's a job interview, or even just chatting with someone you don't know very well. Your first instinct might be to freeze up. But there's something very important to remember here. The person you're speaking with is not focused on how perfect your English is. They're interested in what you're saying and in having a conversation with you. This is something you can remind yourself when you start feeling nervous. The pressure is often in our minds. We think we need to be perfect, but in reality, people just want to understand us and connect with us. A really good way to overcome this pressure is to change your focus. Rather than thinking, what if I make a mistake? Or what if my English isn't perfect? Try thinking, how can I make sure the other person understands me? Focus on the message you want to communicate and remind yourself that making mistakes is part of the learning process. Mistakes are natural, and they can actually help you become a better speaker. So, when you speak English, focus on expressing your ideas clearly, and don't be afraid to make those small mistakes. Along the way, let me tell you a little story about my friend Sarah. Sarah started learning English a few years ago. At first, she felt very nervous and avoided speaking with native speakers because she was afraid of making mistakes. She was in a group at work where most people spoke English, but she would only listen and never join the conversation. But one day, her colleague Mark, who was very friendly and understanding, invited her to have lunch together. Sarah was nervous, but she decided to give it a try. When they sat down, Sarah started by saying, "I'm sorry. My English is not perfect, but I want to practice." And guess what? Mark said, "No problem. Let's just have a casual chat. I'm happy to help." That lunch turned out to be a big breakthrough for Sarah. She started talking more comfortably, even though her English wasn't perfect. Mark didn't judge her for making mistakes. Instead, he encouraged her. Every time Sarah made a mistake, Mark gently corrected her. And after a few months, Sarah's confidence grew so much that she was participating in conversations all the time. So, remember this. If you don't feel confident speaking, try to find someone who's understanding, like Sarah's colleague, Mark. People are usually very supportive when you're learning. If you tell them you want to practice, most people will be more than happy to help you improve. Just like with Sarah, speaking with someone patient and kind can make a huge difference. Now, let's talk about how practicing real-life scenarios can help you build confidence. One of the best ways to practice is by imagining situations you might find yourself in during your daily life. Think about the types of conversations you might have, whether it's at a cafe, in a store, at a doctor's office, or even at work. The more familiar you are with the phrases and vocabulary used in these situations, the less nervous you'll feel when you have to speak. For example, if you often go to the grocery store, imagine yourself having a simple conversation with the cashier. "Cashier, good afternoon. How are you today?" "You?" "I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?" "Cashier, I'm good. Thank you for asking. Are you ready to check out?" "You?" "Yes, I am. How much is everything?" By practicing these types of conversations out loud, even when you're alone, you'll start to feel more comfortable. You won't need to think too much in the moment because you'll already be familiar with what to say. It's like building a mental toolkit for different situations. And remember, these conversations don't have to be complicated. The more simple and natural they are, the more comfortable you'll feel. Here's another story to illustrate this point. My friend Jake is an advanced English learner, but he still struggled to speak confidently in real-world situations. He would practice with his language partners, but whenever he was out in public, he felt nervous. One day, he decided to record himself practicing simple conversations. For example, he would record himself ordering food at a restaurant. At first, it felt strange to hear his own voice, but after a few weeks, Jake started to notice something. He didn't need to think so much about the phrases he was using. They became second nature to him. He also realized that he wasn't making the same mistakes anymore because he had practiced so much. This helped him feel more confident when he went out and spoke with people in English. By practicing with real-life scenarios, Jake prepared himself for any situation he might face in his day-to-day life. Another thing that can help you build confidence is learning how to manage the nervousness that naturally comes with speaking. It's totally normal to feel nervous. Everyone does, even native speakers. But there are ways to control those feelings so they don't take over. One technique I recommend is deep breathing. It might sound simple, but it can really help. You calm your nerves. Before you speak, take a slow, deep breath in for a few seconds, hold it for a moment, and then breathe out slowly. Doing this a few times can help relax your body and clear your mind. When you're not feeling as anxious, you'll be able to focus more on the conversation and less on your nerves. When you start a conversation, try to remind yourself that the other person isn't focused on your mistakes. They're focused on what you're saying. And if you make a mistake, don't worry, just keep going. People appreciate the effort you're making to speak in their language. One of my colleagues, Maria, told me that the first time she went to an English-speaking country, she was so nervous. She was scared she wouldn't understand anyone, and that she'd say something silly. But when she started speaking, she realized that people were more interested in her ideas than in her grammar, and that helped her relax. Another tip is to practice active listening. This means really paying attention to the words and phrases people use around you. The more you listen, the more familiar these phrases will become, and you'll be able to use them in your own conversations. Active listening also helps you understand how conversations flow naturally in English. For example, when you're listening to a conversation, try to notice how people ask follow-up questions. In English, we often ask things like, "What about you? Tell me more about that. How did that make you feel?" By practicing these kinds of responses, you'll be able to engage in conversations more easily. You'll also sound more natural, which will make you feel more confident. So, keep listening to English conversations in your daily life, whether it's through podcasts, videos, or even conversations you overhear while you're out. The more you listen, the more confident you'll be when it's your turn to speak. Let's also talk about how having a daily practice routine can help you build confidence over time. One thing I recommend is setting aside 10 to 15 minutes each day to speak English out loud. This might be difficult at first, but as you continue, it will become easier. Try to talk about simple things in your life. What did you do today? What are your plans for the weekend? What did you have for lunch? These short, simple conversations can help you gain the practice you need to feel more confident. Let's take my friend Peter as an example. Peter was nervous about speaking English in front of others, so he made it a habit to speak to himself in English every day. He would describe his morning routine, talk about his work, and even practice ordering food from his favorite restaurant. The more he spoke, the more comfortable he became. And when he finally started speaking with others, it felt much more natural to him. The key takeaway from Peter's story is that confidence comes with practice. By dedicating a little time every day to speak English, you'll slowly build your speaking skills and reduce your nervousness. As we continue to work on your speaking confidence, remember that every time you speak English, even if you feel nervous or make mistakes, you're making progress. And that progress will add up over time, helping you feel more confident with each conversation. Keep practicing, and we'll keep exploring new ways to help you improve. Let's keep going. And I'm glad you're finding this helpful. The journey to speaking English with confidence is a process, but it's a process you can take step by step. In this part of the conversation, let's dig deeper into how to stay motivated and keep practicing when things feel difficult. Learning. A language can sometimes feel overwhelming, but with the right mindset and strategy, you can keep building your confidence and fluency every day. Now, I want you to think about how you approach challenges in other areas of your life. Maybe there's something you've learned to do, like cooking, sports, or even a new hobby. At the beginning, it probably felt hard, right? You might have made mistakes or felt unsure of yourself. But with practice, those things started to feel more natural. Speaking English is exactly the same way. The more you practice, the more confident you'll feel. Let's talk about something important here. Consistency. Consistency is key when it comes to language learning. Just like with any skill, the more you practice, the better you get. It's not about practicing for hours every day, but it's about doing it regularly. Imagine if you tried to get better at basketball, but you only practiced once a week. You'd struggle. But if you practiced a little every day, even for 15 minutes, you'd improve much faster. I know this can be difficult because sometimes life gets busy. Maybe you work, have family responsibilities, or other commitments. But the key is to fit English practice into your routine, even if it's just a few minutes each day. You don't have to be perfect. The goal is to just keep moving forward. This could mean practicing with a friend, listening to English podcasts during your commute, or simply speaking to yourself in English about your day. Every time you practice, even in small ways, you're taking one step closer to sounding more confident in your speaking. Let's take a look at another example. My friend Emily was juggling a full-time job and family commitments, but she wanted to improve her English speaking skills. At first, she tried to practice for hours each day, but soon realized it wasn't realistic with her schedule. So instead of overwhelming herself, she decided to focus on shorter daily practice sessions. She set aside just 10 minutes every morning to practice speaking English out loud. During this time, she'd talk about what she was going to do that day, or share her thoughts about what she had for breakfast. These short daily practices helped her build her confidence without stressing herself out. As Emily's English became more natural, she felt more comfortable speaking with others. Her confidence grew because she wasn't putting pressure on herself to be perfect. She was simply practicing. So remember, practice doesn't need to be long, but it should be consistent. One thing I often tell my students is that progress in language learning is like planting a tree. In the beginning, you don't see a lot of growth, but if you keep watering it, even when it seems like nothing is happening, eventually you'll notice how big and strong that tree has grown. It's the same with your English skills. You may not see improvement right away, but trust me, it's happening. Every time you practice, your skills are growing, even if you can't see it immediately. Another key point to remember is that your mindset plays a huge role in building confidence. The way you think about yourself and your abilities affects how you speak. When you approach English with a positive attitude, you're more likely to make progress. Instead of thinking, I can't do this, try changing your mindset to, I am learning and I am getting better every day. If you focus on what you can do rather than what you can't, you'll start to notice your confidence growing. Let me tell you a story about my friend Mike. Mike always thought he wasn't good at English. He had studied the language for many years, but he still felt nervous every time he spoke. One day, he decided to change his mindset. He started reminding himself that it's okay to make mistakes, and that making mistakes was part of learning. Instead of worrying about the things he couldn't do, he focused on the things he could. And guess what happened? His confidence grew so much that he started speaking up in meetings at work and even started teaching some of his colleagues English. Mike's story shows how important it is to believe in yourself. A positive mindset can really make a big difference. It can transform your approach to speaking English and help you feel more confident. Now, let's dive into how you can make the most of your English practice by creating opportunities to speak. The more you practice speaking English in real life situations, the better you'll become at managing nervousness and communicating clearly. So, how can you create these opportunities? Well, here are a few simple ideas. First, look for language exchange partners. These are people who want to learn your native language, and in return, you can help them with English. Language exchanges are a great way to practice because you're both focused on helping each other, so there's no pressure to be perfect. Whether you meet in person or chat online, it's a low-stress way to practice speaking and listening. Plus, you can learn a lot from your partner. You might even become friends. Another opportunity is speaking with colleagues or friends who speak English. You can arrange to have short conversations during lunch breaks or whenever you have free time. I know many people feel nervous about speaking at first, but once you make it a habit, it'll get easier. Start by chatting about everyday things, like your weekend plans or the weather. As you continue practicing, you'll gain more confidence in your ability to have longer, more complex conversations. You could also try joining online groups or communities where English is spoken. There are tons of Facebook groups, forums, and even chat rooms where you can interact with English speakers. Participating in these groups can help you practice speaking and also get feedback from others. You'll also be able to see how native speakers express themselves, which will help you use more natural-sounding English in your own conversations. Speaking of online communities, let me tell you about a student of mine, Tom. Tom joined an online group for people learning English. At first, he was really nervous about speaking to people he didn't know, but after a few weeks, he started feeling more comfortable. He began participating in group chats and even spoke in live video calls. The more he spoke, the easier it became. His confidence grew so much that after 6 months, he was even helping others in the group by offering advice on their English. Tom's story shows how joining an online community can really make a difference in building your confidence. The key is to start small and then gradually increase the amount you speak. Remember, building confidence doesn't happen all at once. It takes time, and it requires consistent practice. But the more you practice speaking, the better you'll get. And with each conversation, whether it's with a colleague, a language partner, or an online group, you're strengthening your ability to speak English confidently. You're creating a positive feedback loop where practice leads to progress, and progress leads to more confidence. Here's another great tip. Use technology to your advantage. Nowadays, there are so many apps and tools available that can help you practice your English speaking skills. You can use apps like Duolingo, Hello Talk, or even find YouTube channels like this one to practice speaking and listening. There are also apps that allow you to record yourself speaking and listen back to improve your pronunciation and fluency. One of my students, Linda, started using an app where she could record her voice and listen to herself speak. At first, she didn't like hearing her voice, but she kept going. She focused on how she could improve her pronunciation and sentence structure. Over time, she began to sound more natural, and her confidence grew. Linda's story is a great example of how technology can help you practice and improve without needing to wait for someone else to help. To wrap this part up, confidence in speaking English comes from a mix of mindset, practice, and real-life opportunities. You can do this. The more you practice and challenge yourself to speak, the more confident you will become. Keep setting small goals. Focus on improvement, and remember that mistakes are part of the process. Keep going and keep learning, and soon you'll see just how far you've come.